What's going on, everyone? So Christian Wood is still out there on the open market and doesn't really seem to have a reasonable suitor at this time. Based on countless reports, it looks like Christian Wood is just getting offered vet minimum contracts. Teams kind of want to bring him in on a prove-it deal. He's looking for more. He doesn't want to sign a vet minimum contract. He wants more. But the well is drying up, and there's not really many options for teams. And the teams that still have money and still maybe could want him are all young. And do they really want to bring him in with all of his character and locker room issues? Probably not. And does he want to do that? Like, how bad does he want the money? There's a lot of questions on that. And look, if it was something like the Spurs were like, hey, let's just throw money at Christian Wood, it kind of feels like that would have already happened. So it's kind of a rough stretch right now for Christian Wood. He's undoubtedly talented. He's a 17-8 guy that can provide you quality offense. Not great really on the defensive end, but he's got 6'10 size, so he's got good size. Can play the center, play the power forward spot. He's very valuable for a lot of teams. But as we've seen, if you're not a guy that's willing to come in and be part of the team and be a part of the organization, and you're just all about yourself, you're going to have some issues out there. And that's basically what's happening with him. But he's so talented, teams are at least willing to bring him in on like a vet minimum deal. They just don't want to pay him 10 plus million. Now, I've seen a lot of people throw out the idea of the Chicago Bulls. There isn't really any reports on that. I don't really see Chicago doing that, right? Like, Chicago's looking to trade Zach LaVine, so they very well might end up blowing it up. And not just that, but they already have Vu, they already have Andre Drummond. They're playing DeMar DeRozan at the 4 a lot. Like, I don't know why they would throw that $10 million exception into Christian Wood. Maybe they look at it as there's not really many better options out there, but they're almost better off just kind of keeping that and seeing like what develops on the buyout market, what ends up happening in the Zach LaVine trade, right? Also, they could take on more money because now they have this exception. Like, there's options for Chicago. So I don't really see Chicago signing Christian Wood for more than like a vet minimum. Also, maybe they give him a little bit more of a bump, right? Maybe instead of like a vet minimum, they give him like $4 million, but I don't know if that's what Chicago would want to do because I don't even think they know what direction they're going in right now. So what ends up happening? And now we're seeing reports that the Dallas Mavericks actually want to look to sign and trade him. Now, Dallas is hard capped, so they're kind of in a tough position right now where they couldn't sign him to this huge contract to take salary back. But they could help Christian Wood get a little more money and also get a player in return. And the Lakers have obviously been linked heavily to Christian Wood and want Christian Wood. And reports have even said that if he just continues to get vet minimum contracts, he's going to choose the Lakers. That if his only option is vet minimums, then he'd rather take a vet minimum with the Lakers as opposed to any of these other teams. So that's a real question. But the Lakers supposedly want Christian Wood badly. And if Dallas is willing to work out a sign and trade, if you're the Lakers, do you want to run the risk of losing him to another team via a sign and trade? Right? But also, what team is willing to sign and trade? Right? Like, what team is like, oh, okay, like, I want Christian Wood so bad that I'll give him, $5 million a year rather than, like, a vet minimum. Right? Like, it's just, like, what are you unloading? Unless you have a player that's on, like, a multi-year deal and it's like, well, we'd be clearing off the salary or something. Sure, I get it. I just don't see many options as far as a sign and trade for Dallas for Christian Wood. Now, there is always something out there, right? Like I said, maybe a team has a guy that they just want to unload, or maybe Dallas is willing to include a second-round pick or something like that just to get back a player that fills in a need, right? So maybe a team would be willing, like, hey, we want to kind of unload this guy. Dallas would give us, an asset. I don't know. There's options there as far as, like, what potential could happen, but I just don't know what teams would be lining up to go and pay Christian Wood a bunch of money. Now, from a Christian Wood standpoint, if that could be worked out, then that's great for him. But the question is, if you're the Lakers, do you just wait and say, hey, if he ends up getting traded, so be it? It is what it is. Or do you look at it as like, well, we might as well just go get him, right? Why run the risk of him going elsewhere when we want him and we can bring him in, and instead of giving him, $2.5 million or whatever it is, we can give him $4 million on a deal, right? But The problem with that is if the Lakers go and trade for Christian Wood, and of course you already see the rumors and stuff, but the Lakers are limited in what they could do. Now, Jarred Vanderbilt is really the only guy that would make sense for both sides, and it's the only like contract that the Lakers have that they could just like swap for, right? Because you don't want to get rid of the young guys, and not just that, but their salaries. You'd have to throw in multiple guys. Like, that doesn't make any sense for the Lakers. Where Jarred Vanderbilt, you could just do an even swap. Both teams stay under the hard cap, and you just basically swap Jarred Vanderbilt for Christian Wood. Now, I'm not saying that that's a good idea. I'm not saying that they should do that. But there are pros and cons for both, right? So, for starters, Jarred Vanderbilt is a elite level defensive guy. Don't get me wrong. He is incredible defensively. But he's a huge liability offensively. Christian Wood provides you the offense and gives you a big man that you can dump the ball down to, right? We saw a lot for the Lakers. The Lakers run into trouble where they just couldn't score. Like, the shots weren't falling, and they just, like, AD didn't have it going, and it was like, what do we do? A guy like Christian Wood could really help with that because you could just dump it down to him and let him go to work down on the block. That could be very helpful. Defensively, Christian Wood is nowhere near what Jarred Vanderbilt is, but can he be at least respectable defensively? Now, the other sort of, con as to why it makes sense for the Lakers to trade Jarred Vanderbilt is, like, they have a plethora of sizable big men where if you lose Jarred Vanderbilt, like, you're fine. You know, like, if, like, last year, if you lost Jarred Vanderbilt, that's bad. Right, because now you only really have Rui and LeBron that can play the three that's sizable. Well, now the Lakers have Taurean Prince, you have Cam Reddish, you have Rui Hachimura, you have LeBron James. You could even go, like, if you had to in a pinch, go like a Lewis or a Christie, or, certain matchups, like if you're playing the Warriors, you could move Austin Reeves to the three. So it's not like if you lose Jarred Vanderbilt, Now you're in trouble. Now you're in big trouble, right? And defensively, you have enough size, defense, and team scheme to where you can lose Jarred Vanderbilt and it's not going to kill you, right? Jarred Vanderbilt undoubtedly makes you better defensively. That's not a question, right? I mean, the Lakers went from like a good defense to like the number one defense when the Lakers went and got Jarred Vanderbilt, and that's because of his ability to impact and slow down these stars. And that's very valuable. But if you can still be the top defense, even without a Jarred Vanderbilt, then it's like, okay, you're number one. Now you're just more number one, right? Like, you still need the offense to supplement that. Where if you can be, if you can be the number one defense and a top three offense with Christian Wood, that's better than being a number one defense and a top 7 offense without Christian Wood. Right? Because now you're better offensively, but you still have the same number one defense. You're still getting the stops, and you're better offensively. The downside to losing Jarred Vanderbilt is you lose that guy that you can just throw at, the Jamal Murrays, the Kyrie Irvings, the Steph Currys, and he was guarding them effectively and efficiently, right? This is a guy that you could throw at pretty much anybody. Like, name a star, and he was guarding them, and he was doing it well, right? So that, of course, would have its hit. That, of course, would have its impact. The other thing is just the logjam, right? Like, if you sign Christian Wood, how do you find minutes for everybody? Because let's say the Lakers just signed Christian Wood on a vet minimum, right? Which you absolutely do if you can. Well, now you have Christian Wood, you have Anthony Davis, you have LeBron James, you have Rui Hachimura, you have Jarred Vanderbilt, you have Taurean Prince, you have Cam Reddish. That's 7 guys that can play the power forward or the small forward or both. That's 7 guys that you have to figure out how to get enough minutes to where it makes sense for those guys at those 2 spots. And also Christian Wood, right? So you add that in. So you find this logjam, and it's like, well, who becomes the odd man out? Okay, let's say it's Cam Reddish. You still have 6 or 7 guys that you still need to find minutes for, right? Now, okay, you can move, let's say you move Taurean Prince as the backup too, right? Because he's got the size, he's got the shooting and the defense, he can play the 2 guard. Okay, well, now you still have 5 or 6 guys that could do that, right? So it's just, you would have this logjam if you just got Christian Wood, to where it's like, okay, well, we could solve that logjam by unloading Jarred Vanderbilt and you get Christian Wood. And also you got to keep in mind, next year, they're going to have to pay Jarred Vanderbilt, right? They got him right now for $4.5 million, but that's it. After that, he's due for a new contract. How much is he going to get? And does a team end up paying more for him? Where you could get Christian Wood. Can you get Christian Wood for, say, a 3-year deal for like $12 million or something like that, right? Well, now you got a better player locked in longer term, and you don't have to worry about Jarred Vanderbilt going elsewhere. Now, granted, he'd be restricted, so you'd be able to match whatever, but if you get a team that overpays for Jarred Vanderbilt just to take him from you, then in hindsight, you look back and you go, man, you should have just traded him for Christian Wood, right? So there are the pros and the cons as far as like this type of deal. Now, obviously, again, Christian Wood doesn't help defensively. That's without a doubt. But can you get him to be serviceable defensively? You don't need him to be Jarred Vanderbilt defensively, but if you can get him bought in and at least trying on the defensive end, then he's a better player than Jarred Vanderbilt. He is. And he's not old, right? Jarred Vanderbilt's 24, he's 27. So he's only 3 years older than Jarred Vanderbilt. And he gives you Anthony Davis insurance. He gives you... There's a real argument for Christian Wood. A real one. It's just us as Lakers Nation have really fallen in love with Jarred Vanderbilt. And rightfully so. I mean, he's been great defensively. Dude, the guy... You see him one game, he's shutting down Brandon Ingram. The next game, he's shutting down Anthony Edwards. The next game, he's guarding Kyrie and Luka and then Jamal Murray. And you're just like, dude, this guy is just like, he's so versatile on the defensive end. And that's a great piece to have. But you still got to be able to score the basketball. And I still think the Lakers would be a top defensive team in the league, even without Jarred Vanderbilt. Jarred Vanderbilt's just that, like, he just makes you far and away better than everyone else defensively. That's the thing. Like that, Jarred Vanderbilt makes you from like the best defense to like far and away, no questionable, the best defense. But you have to have the offense that can keep up, and that was a problem, right? Like look at the Denver series. Jarred Vanderbilt was a non-factor, and we couldn't stop Denver, and the problem is we couldn't score enough to keep up with Denver. Christian Wood would kind of solve that. And I'm not saying that you build your roster for one team, but you have Taurean Prince, you have Cam Reddish, you have Gabe Vincent, you have Austin Reeves, you have Anthony Davis. You have Rui Hachimura. You have several guys that can all play defense. You got a ton of size. You add in Christian Wood, he just has to be serviceable defensively. I still believe you're a top defensive team, and you're going to be better offensively, right? Like, that's the thing. For example, the Boston Celtics were the only team in the league that were top 5 offense and top 5 defense. And they've been that every year, and every year they're in the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals, for the most part, right? The problem with Boston is they just can't, they just have stars that completely disappear and just can't close out at times and are too predictable, right? Where the Lakers, I don't think they have any of those problems. I mean, you can make an argument Anthony Davis disappearing, so they do have a star that disappears, but I think that, again, if you can be the best defense and a top 3 offense with Christian Wood, as opposed to a top 7 offense, but the number 1 defense with Jarred Vanderbilt, you go get Christian Wood. Because, again, you're better offensively and you're still the best defense. So you're still going to be able to shut people down, and now you're able to outscore them. Because you need to find that fine balance. Again, I'm not saying that they should do it or not. I'm just saying that there's a real argument. And it personally, only if you can get Christian Wood locked up for multiple years. Like, if you're just signing Christian Wood, like, if it's just a sign and trade and the only year that's guaranteed is a 1-year deal, like you're signing a 1-year, $4 million deal to bring in Christian Wood, no. I would not do that. But if you can sign Christian Wood to, like, say a 3-year, $15 million deal with a player option or something like that, right? Then yes, I would absolutely do it. Absolutely, in a heartbeat. Because now you don't have to worry about overpaying for Jarred Vanderbilt. You're better offensively. You just got to get him serviceable defensively, and you have him long term. You have him for the next at least minimum 2 years. And if he works out for you, great. If not, he's a reasonable contract that you can trade and move, right? So he's a guy that you can add on to a bigger deal if you need to, right? If it works, great. You got Christian Wood, a 17-8 guy, for $5 million a year the next 3 years. That is an absolute steal, right? So I just think it depends on what the deal would entail. And also, could you get assets? Could you get like a second round pick in return? Because it's like, hey, we're doing you a favor. Nobody wants Christian Wood. We want some assets. Like, what if you could get Christian Wood in like 2 seconds, right? Or like a heavily protected first or something like that, right? Like, could you do something like that where you get assets in return that could help for the long term, or even just be used to package for a deal in the future? To me, it boils down to what is the deal. If you can get a good deal in exchange for Jarred Vanderbilt, why not? Absolutely, do it. But if it's just like, hey, we want to just swap Jarred Vanderbilt for Christian Wood, and you're only going to get Christian Wood for a year because he wants to hopefully have a prove-it deal and then make money next year, then no, there's no point. Keep Jarred Vanderbilt, right? Because worst case scenario, he's a great trade piece at the trade deadline. 24 years old, elite defensive player on a $4.5 million contract. He could be the difference between you getting a star or not in a trade. So there's arguments either way. Christian Wood, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James would be a very formidable front court, right? Like, there's undoubtable that would be a front court. It comes down to the deal. I think that Christian Wood undoubtedly helps and makes the Lakers better. If you swap Jarred Vanderbilt with Christian Wood, I think the Lakers are better with Christian Wood than Jarred Vanderbilt, because you're still going to be very good defensively. It's not like you're going to lose Christian Wood and you're going to go from being a top defense to now you're one of the worst in the league. That's not going to happen. You have too many guys that are good defensively, or at least serviceable defensively, and Darvin Ham has shown that he's a good enough defensive coach that he can make this roster and these players good defensively. And look, the guy got Russell Westbrook to buy in defensively, and Russell Westbrook was never known for his defense, and people thought it would never happen, and he was really good for Lakers defensively. So can he just get Christian Wood to be serviceable? He doesn't have to be elite or anything like that. Just good enough to hold his own and play within the team defense. If he can do that, then great. He's still a 6'10 guy with a good wingspan and length. Like, he can play defense. He just has to buy in and be willing to exert the energy. If the Lakers can get him to do that, the Lakers are better with Christian Wood than Jarred Vanderbilt. Christian Wood is an overall better player than Jarred Vanderbilt. Jarred Vanderbilt's just really good defensively, but he's been atrocious offensively. The thing is, though, too, is how much better is he shooting now? Because Jarred Vanderbilt has been working like a madman on specifically that corner three. So if he can get to like 36% from three, then maybe not, right? Granted, Jarred Vanderbilt's not going to be a 17-point-a-game scorer, but talking about elite defense, and if he can give you like 9 to 12 points a game, then at that point, he probably has more of an impact. But if Jarred Vanderbilt is essentially the same player that he was last year, the Lakers would be better with Christian Wood. And it would kind of fill out the roster better. Because now you basically, what your lineup is. You got, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Christian Wood, and then you have Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell. And then your next five would be Gabe Vincent, Taurean Prince, Rui Hachimura, Cam Reddish, and then Jackson Hayes. There you go. There's your five. And you're good defensively. You got switchability. You got length. You got size. You can go small and play Christian Wood at the five. I do. I don't. If it happens, I don't hate it. I don't. I just think it depends on the deal. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you think yes, trade for Christian Wood, Jarred Vanderbilt for Christian Wood swap? Do you think no, don't? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments.